Welcome to another custom-tailored deep dive. We are really glad you could join us today to explore the sources you asked for.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So today, we're taking you back to August 1914. That's the very first month of World War I. And our focus is the Battle of Tannenberg.
Right.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. A military history analysis about a battle fought over a century ago.
It can sound a bit dry at first.
Exactly, but stick with us because this is not your typical recounting of troop movements. Based on the historical documentation and the comprehensive Wikipedia article we're pulling from today, this battle is, well, it's a masterclass in how absolutely not to communicate.
It really is. It's a fascinating case study in just complete systemic failure.
We're talking about an army that literally handed their secret battle plans to their enemy over the radio.
Just gave them right away.
Yeah. And to top it all off, the winners deliberately named the battle as an act of petty revenge for a fight that happened 500 years earlier.
Which is incredibly petty.
Right. It has all the tension of a modern political thriller, but obviously with devastating real-world consequences.
What's fascinating here is the sheer scale of the disaster we're looking at. Because we aren't just talking about a minor tactical loss or, a temporary setback.
No, not all.
The Battle of Tannenberg resulted in the encirclement and the almost complete destruction of the Russian Second Army by the German Eighth Army.
Just wiped out.
Wiped out. A defeat so absolute that it ultimately led to the tragic suicide of the Russian commanding general.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the setup is crucial to understanding how things went so wrong so quickly.
Definitely.
So, as you likely know, Germany enters World War I following the Schlieffen Plan. They were putting the vast majority of their forces against France in the west.
Leaving just a skeleton crew in the east.
Exactly, just the Eighth Army. A mere 10% of their forces were left in East Prussia to defend against the entire Russian Empire.
And the Russians knew this. They were allied with the French, and the French desperately needed Russia to put pressure on Germany from the east.
To split their focus.
Right, so the Russian General Zelensky made a massive promise. He said he would throw 800,000 men at the front by day 15 of mobilization.
800,000 by day 15.
It was wildly ambitious.
But making a promise on paper is one thing. How did that actually translate to the reality on the ground? Because the sources show massive fatal cracks right from day one.
It was an absolute logistical nightmare. The infrastructure simply wasn't there. For instance, 75% of Russian railways were single-tracked.
Wow.
Yeah, so you immediately have a massive bottleneck for moving troops, artillery, and food.
But the truly crazy part is the rail gauge, right?
Yes, the gauge. Russian trains operated on a wider rail gauge than Western Europe.
Meaning their trains physically could not run on German tracks?
Right. Originally, that was a defensive measure, so invaders couldn't just ride a train straight to Moscow.
Which makes sense for defense.
But on the offensive, it backfired terribly. They could only take the trains to the border. Once they crossed into German territory, they had to rely on captured German locomotives.
If they could even find any.
Exactly. Otherwise, they had to unload everything and march over terrible, sandy, primitive roads.
And we really need to talk about the horses.
Oh, the cavalry.
Because the Russians deployed huge numbers of cavalry and Cossacks.
Yeah.
And think about this for a second. Every single horse needed 10 times the daily resources of a human soldier.
10 times.
And they had to move all that grain and fodder over those same awful sandy roads because the trains couldn't cross the border.
It perfectly illustrates the friction of war. Logistics win wars.
They really do.
It's like trying to run complex modern software on a 20-year-old computer. The infrastructure just couldn't handle the ambition.
That is a great way to put it. So they're exhausted before the shooting even starts. Which brings us to the communication breakdown.
The fatal flaw.
Because they were moving so fast, they didn't have enough physical cable to run telegraph lines from the rear command up to the front.
So they had to use mobile wireless stations.
Here's where it gets really interesting. General Samsonov, commanding the Second Army, had to talk to his boss, Zelensky, and he also had to coordinate with the First Army.
But the Russians actually knew the Germans had broken their ciphers.
They knew this wasn't a secret to them. They were fully aware the Germans were listening.
They even had new code books ready.
So why on earth didn't they use them?
It's a profound failure of risk assessment. Because of that rushed 15-day mobilization, there was a shortage of the new books.
Yeah.
Zelensky had one in the rear.
But Samsonov out in the field didn't.
Right. So Samsonov is deep in hostile territory, trying to move hundreds of thousands of men, and he feels he just can't afford the time it takes to send a physical courier over those sandy roads.
So he just broadcasts his daily marching orders.
In the clear, completely uncoded.
He literally read his battle plans over the radio for the Germans to hear.
He traded operational security for speed. The sources say he was basically counting on a miracle.
Hope is not a strategy.
Never. And the leadership was completely disorganized too. Samsonov and Zelensky were actively arguing over the radio about which direction to march.
Zelensky wanted to go north. Samsonov wanted to go northwest to protect his flanks.
So they reached this terrible compromise. They split the Second Army. Zelensky orders one of the corps to march north, completely separating them from the main force.
Right when they needed mass and unity the most.
And thanks to the uncoded radio, the Germans are listening to the whole argument.
Just eating it up. But let's be fair, the Germans weren't exactly a well-oiled machine at the very start either.
Oh, not at all.
Let's look at the prelude at Gumminen. The initial German commander, Prittwitz, engages the Russian First Army and takes heavy losses.
And he completely loses his nerve.
Panics, just totally panics.
He gets on the phone with Supreme Headquarters, shouting at the Chief of Staff, Moltke. He wants to abandon East Prussia entirely and retreat.
Which was politically unacceptable. You don't just hand over a historic province.
So Moltke fires him on the spot.
Immediately. And they bring in the replacements. They pull an older, retired general named Paul von Hindenburg.
He was 66.
Right. And they pair him with a really intense, rising staff officer named Erich Ludendorff. And they actually meet for the very first time on a special train heading to the front.
That train ride changes everything. They link up with an operational officer already there, Max Hoffman.
And they scrap the retreat.
Completely. They look at the map, they look at those uncoded Russian intercepts, and they realize they have a massive opportunity.
They don't just want to stop the Russians, they want to annihilate them. And the way they pull this off is a logistical marvel.
It's the starkest contrast to the Russian situation. The Germans had this highly flexible, double-tracked railway network.
And they used it to literally pick up their army and shift it across the map.
They moved troops over 150 kilometers, running day and night.
The sources say they ran one train every 30 minutes.
And they only gave the soldiers 25 minutes to unload instead of the usual hour or two.
The stress must have been off the charts.
Oh, absolutely. Which is why Hoffman, the operations officer, started spreading a rumor to calm the nerves of the German staff.
I love this detail. He claims that the two Russian commanders, Samsonov and Rennenkamp, hated each other from the Russo-Japanese War.
He said they got into a physical fistfight at a train station a decade earlier.
So Hoffman is walking around saying, don't worry, they hate each other, they'll never help each other.
Whether the fistfight was true or not, the reality on the ground backed it up.
The two Russian armies were completely disconnected.
Rennenkamp had paused his First Army to resupply and lost contact. He even reported that the Germans were retreating,
leaving Samsonov's Second Army completely isolated and pushing deeper into the trap.
exhausted by the summer heat and outrunning their supplies.
So that brings us to August 24th. The trap is about to spring. Hindenburg and Ludendorff are driving along the front lines,
Dodging burning villages and panic-stricken refugees.
but they are in total control.
Because local German telephone operators bravely stayed at their switchboards. They kept the command cars connected to the front.
While Samsonov was practically blind.
A Russian cavalry commander later noted Samsonov was sitting on a hill, far from his wireless set, missing vital reports.
And the Germans are getting a constant stream of uncoded intercepts. Plus, they captured a marked map from a dead Russian officer.
Giving them everything they needed.
Which leads to that famous moment where Hindenburg confidently tells his staff, "Gentlemen, our preparations are so well in hand that we can sleep soundly tonight."
Though Ludendorff actually had a moment of panic shortly after that.
He did, didn't he?
Yeah. An aerial observer reported that the Russian First Army was finally moving. Ludendorff thought they were going to get crushed between the two forces.
He wanted to break off the attack.
And Hindenburg, the older, steady guy, calmly takes him behind a nearby hedge.
Literally whops him behind a bush away from the staff.
Soothes him, calms him down, and tells him they are sticking to the plan.
And Hindenburg was right. The other Russian army was moving too slowly. The vice just closes.
Even with some insubordination on the German side, General Francois refused to attack early without his artillery.
He said his men would have to fight with bayonets.
But once his guns arrived, it was devastating.
By August 29th, the trap is fully shut. The Russian Second Army realizes they're outflanked, they try to retreat south, and they run right into a new German line.
A complete cauldron at Frogenau.
The slaughter is hard to even picture. Russian soldiers trying to cross open crop fields, just mowed down by machine guns and artillery.
The command structure just disintegrated. Samsonov was surrounded with his men. The roads were jammed with miles of prisoners.
And the climax is incredibly dark. On the night of August 30th, General Samsonov simply cannot face reporting this to Tsar Nicholas II.
It is too much.
He slips away from his staff into the woods at night, and he commits suicide.
His body wasn't even found until the following year.
So what does this all mean? The numbers are staggering. The Germans lost around 12,000 men.
But the Russian losses. Up to 120,000 killed, wounded, or captured.
It took 60 entire trains just to carry the captured Russian equipment back to Germany.
And then the myth-making begins immediately.
Right. Hindenburg requests the victory be named the Battle of Tannenberg, even though the heavy fighting was near Allenstein, 30 kilometers away.
Because exactly 500 years earlier, in 1410, the Teutonic Knights were defeated by a Slavic coalition at the First Battle of Tannenberg.
A brilliant piece of propaganda.
He framed it as historical vengeance, erasing a 500-year-old stain on Germanic pride.
And it turns Hindenburg into an epic hero. Ludendorff gets massive praise too. But what about Max Hoffmann?
The guy who planned the rail movements and kept everyone calm?
Totally ignored.
He was incredibly bitter about it.
Oh, he would give tours later and sarcastically point out buildings saying, this is where the field marshal slept before the battle, and this is where he slept during the battle.
Taking relentless shots at Hindenburg.
Though Hindenburg basically said, look, if we had lost, my name would be cursed, so I get the credit for winning.
Which is how command works. This raises an important question as we look back on all this. Tannenberg is remembered as a tactical masterpiece of encirclement and logistics, but it was entirely enabled by systemic Russian failures.
The hubris.
The terrible infrastructure, and the stunning refusal to secure their own communications.
They knew the messages were being intercepted. They had the intelligence.
But doing things the right way felt too slow in a rushed situation.
Samsonov traded security for the illusion of speed, and it cost him everything.
It really makes you think about our own lives.
Exactly. I want you to think about this. In our fast-paced world, when the pressure is on, what uncoded messages are you broadcasting just because the secure, proper process feels too inconvenient?
It's so easy to just skip the safety checks when you're rushing.
How often do we accept a massive known risk simply because doing it right feels too slow in the heat of the moment? Something to mull over. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it gave you some fascinating insights into the friction of war and the high cost of bad communication. Keep asking questions and stay curious.